Marcus Kane's $50 million cryptocurrency deal had just cleared when his phone rang with the words that would destroy everything he thought he knew about the past 6 months. "Sir, she named you as the father." The hospital intake coordinator's voice cut through his Vegas penthouse like a blade, and Marcus felt the Scotch glass slip from his fingers, shattering against the Italian marble floor in a symphony of destruction that somehow matched the chaos erupting in his chest. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me take you back to understand how a man who controlled half the digital money flowing through Nevada found himself staring at hospital paperwork that claimed he was the father of a child he'd never met. 6 months ago, Marcus Kane had been untouchable. Today, he was about to discover that some debts can't be paid with blockchain technology and offshore accounts. The coordinator's voice continued through the phone speaker, each word hitting Marcus like physical blows. "The mother, Amanda Kane, she's not going to make it, sir. The complications from childbirth, they're too severe. She specifically requested that we contact you about the baby." Marcus stared out at the Las Vegas skyline, the city lights blurring as his mind raced. Amanda, his ex-wife, the woman who'd walked out of his life 6 months ago with nothing more than divorce papers and a promise that she never wanted to see him again. The same woman who'd screamed that she couldn't live with what he'd become, who'd thrown her wedding ring at his feet and called him a monster. "How do you know this number?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Years of running high-stakes operations had taught him to compartmentalize, to think clearly even when the world was collapsing. "Mrs. Kane left detailed instructions, sir. She said if anything happened to her during delivery, we were to contact Marcus Kane immediately. She said you'd know what to do." What to do? Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity. 6 months ago, Amanda had made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with his world of cryptocurrency laundering, offshore shell companies, and the less-than-legal methods he used to move money for some very dangerous people. Now she expected him to know what to do with a baby. "I need confirmation," Marcus said. Marcus, walking to his wall safe behind a false panel. "DNA test, medical records, everything." "Of course, sir. The baby is in our NICU. She's beautiful, sir. Healthy despite everything that happened." A daughter. Marcus felt something twist in his chest, an emotion he hadn't experienced since Amanda left. The safe opened with a soft beep, revealing stacks of untraceable phones, hard drives, and documents that could put half of Nevada's political elite in federal prison. "Text me the hospital address," Marcus said, grabbing a clean phone. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The drive to Mountain View Medical Center should have taken 35 minutes. Marcus made it in 18, his McLaren 720S cutting through traffic like the laws of physics were merely suggestions. The entire drive, his mind kept circling back to one impossible question. If Amanda hated him enough to disappear for 6 months, why would she name him as the father? The hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. 2 cents Marcus was more familiar with than he cared to admit. His legitimate businesses included several medical equipment companies, fronts that allowed him to move money while maintaining the appearance of respectability. But standing in the maternity ward felt different, more real somehow. "Mr. Kane," a woman in scrubs approached him, clipboard in hand. "I'm Dr. Patricia Martinez. We spoke on the phone." Marcus studied her face, looking for tells. 20 years of reading people in high-pressure situations had made him excellent at spotting deception. Dr. Martinez seemed genuine, but in his world, genuine was often the most dangerous kind of lie. "Show me the documents," Marcus said. She handed him a manila folder. Inside, Amanda's signature was unmistakable on the birth certificate. Baby girl Kane, born at 3:47 a.m. Father, Marcus Kane. Mother, Amanda Elizabeth Kane. But it was the attached note, written in Amanda's careful handwriting, that stopped his breath. "Marcus, I know you'll probably hate me for this, but she's yours. I never stopped loving you, even after everything. I just couldn't live in your world, but she deserves to know her father. Please don't let her grow up thinking she wasn't wanted." "So where is she?" Marcus asked, his voice rougher than intended. Dr. Martinez led him through a maze of corridors to the NICU. Through the glass wall, Marcus saw her, tiny, perfect, with Amanda's dark hair and what looked like his stubborn chin. She was connected to monitors that beeped softly, but Dr. Martinez assured him she was healthy, just being monitored as a precaution. "She's going to need a name for the official records," Dr. Martinez said gently. Marcus stared at his daughter, and God, wasn't that a concept that was going to take some getting used to, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. For 6 months, he told himself that Amanda's departure was for the best, that his world was too dangerous for someone pure enough to actually believe in justice and legal solutions. But looking at this tiny person who shared his DNA, Marcus realized Amanda had given him something more valuable than any cryptocurrency wallet. She'd given him a reason to become someone better. Sophia, Marcus said softly. Her name is Sophia Kane. But as he spoke the words, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple, only 5 words, but it made Marcus's blood run cold. We know about the baby. The mate, 18 months earlier, Marcus Kane had been what most people would call legitimately successful. His company, Digital Velocity Solutions, processed payments for tech startups across the Southwest. Clean money, legal contracts, tax returns that would make any accountant proud. The problem with clean money, Marcus discovered, was that it moved slowly. And when you're trying to build an empire, slow money is dead money. The transformation began with a single phone call from Vincent Chen, a venture capitalist with connections that ran deeper than the Mariana Trench. Vincent needed help moving some complicated funds for overseas investors, and he was willing to pay premium rates for discretion and speed. Think of it as financial consulting, Vincent had explained over dinner at Nobu Las Vegas. Some of our international clients prefer privacy in their transactions. Nothing illegal, just creative accounting. Marcus had been married to Amanda for 2 years at that point. She was working 70-hour weeks at Blackstone and Associates, the most prestigious law firm in Nevada, chasing her dream of making partner before 30. She barely noticed when Marcus started working longer hours, bringing in clients who paid in Bitcoin and preferred meetings in cash-only establishments. The beauty of cryptocurrency laundering, Marcus discovered, was its elegance. Traditional money laundering required physical movement, cash stuffed in suitcases, wire transfers through shell companies, complex webs of legitimate businesses. But digital currency moved like water, flowing through wallets and exchanges so quickly that even federal investigators struggled to follow the trail. Marcus developed a system he privately called the carousel. Dirty money would enter through one of 12 different cryptocurrency exchanges, bounce through a series of automated trading programs that made thousands of microtransactions per second, then emerge clean through his legitimate business accounts. To outside observers, it looked like Marcus had simply become very good at cryptocurrency speculation. Amanda had been proud of his success. She'd bragged to her law firm colleagues about her husband's business acumen, how he'd built a tech company from nothing. She'd send him text messages during long days at the office, telling him how lucky she felt to be married to someone so ambitious and clever. If only she'd known how right she was about the clever part. The first crack in their marriage appeared 8 months later, when Amanda came home early from a conference in San Francisco. Marcus was in his home office, managing a particularly complex transaction for some of Vincent's Eastern European clients. $7 million was flowing through the carousel, and Marcus was manually overriding some of the automated safeguards to speed up the process. "Baby, you won't believe what happened today," Amanda had called out, her voice bright with excitement. "The Morrison case settled, and Richard thinks I might make senior associate next year if I keep—" She'd stopped talking when she saw the screens. 12 monitors showing cryptocurrency wallets, exchange interfaces, and transaction logs that clearly weren't for any legitimate business. Marcus had been so focused on the technical aspects that he hadn't heard her come in. "What is this?" Amanda asked, her voice changing from excited to confused to something approaching fear. Marcus had exactly 3 seconds to decide how to handle the situation. He could lie, claim it was speculation for his own portfolio. He could deflect, ask about her day and try to distract her, or he could tell her the truth and hope that love would be stronger than moral objections. He chose honesty. It was the first of many mistakes. "I'm helping some clients move money," Marcus said, turning in his chair to face her. "It's not exactly traditional banking, but it's not illegal either. Just creative." Amanda was smart enough to read between the lines. She'd spent 2 years prosecuting financial crimes before joining private practice. She knew what money laundering looked like, even the sophisticated digital version. "How long?" she asked quietly. "About 6 months." "How much?" "Total? Maybe 50 million has moved through the system." Amanda sat down heavily on the leather couch they'd picked out together for his office. For a long moment, she just stared at the screens, watching numbers change as transactions processed automatically. "You have to stop," she said finally. "Amanda, this is bringing in more money than we ever dreamed of. Do you know what we could do with this kind of income? That house in Malibu you showed me, the one on the cliffs, we could buy it cash. I don't want a house bought with blood money." "It's not blood money, it's just money that some people prefer to keep private." Amanda stood up, and Marcus could see her lawyer training kicking in. She was analyzing, processing, preparing arguments. "Marcus, you're laundering money. That's a federal crime. Do you understand what happens to me if this comes out? I'm an officer of the court. I could lose my license, face criminal charges myself. That won't happen. The system is foolproof. Even if someone wanted to investigate, the trail is so complex. There's always a trail." Amanda's voice rose, and Marcus heard something he'd never heard from her before. Fear. "Money leaves traces, Marcus. Maybe not traces that local cops can follow, but the FBI has people who do nothing but chase financial crimes. If they decide to look at you, they won't. You don't know that." They'd argued for 3 hours, Amanda begging him to stop, to go back to legitimate business. Marcus explaining that legitimate business would never generate the kind of wealth that could give them real freedom. Amanda pointing out that money meant nothing if they were looking over their shoulders for the rest of their lives. The argument ended with Amanda sleeping in the guest room, and Marcus staring at his monitors until dawn, watching millions of dollars flow through digital pathways he'd created. He'd built something beautiful and complex and profitable, and the woman he loved wanted him to destroy it. Marcus had chosen the money. The second of many mistakes. For the next 6 months, their marriage became a cold war. Amanda threw herself deeper into her legal work, taking cases that required travel, working weekends, anything to avoid being home when Marcus was conducting business. Marcus expanded his operation, bringing in new clients, developing more sophisticated systems. They barely spoke. When they did, it was about safe topics, weather, groceries, Amanda's cases that didn't involve financial crimes. Marcus told himself that she'd come around eventually, that once she saw the lifestyle his success could provide, she'd understand his choices. The end came on a Tuesday in February. Marcus was closing a particularly complex deal, $23 million from a client Vincent described as aggressively private. The transaction required manual intervention at 3 different stages, and Marcus was deep in concentration when Amanda walked into his office carrying 2 pieces of paper. "I filed for divorce this morning," she said quietly. "These are your copies." Marcus looked up from his screens, seeing Amanda clearly for the first time in months. She'd lost weight. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hands were shaking slightly as she held the documents. "Amanda, we can work this out. We just need to—" "No." Her voice was steady, final. "We can't work this out, Marcus. I can't be married to someone who breaks the law for a living. I can't pretend that this is just creative financing or whatever you're calling it this week." She placed the papers on his desk, next to the keyboard where he'd been typing commands that would clean money for people who did things that made divorce papers seem trivial. "I loved you," Amanda said, and the past tense hit Marcus like a physical blow. "I loved your ambition and your intelligence and the way you could solve any problem. But this isn't solving problems, Marcus. This is creating them." "The money," Marcus began. "Keep the money. Keep all of it. I don't want anything that came from this." She gestured at the monitors. "I just want out." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "And Marcus, when this all comes crashing down, and it will come crashing down, don't call me. Don't try to drag me into whatever mess you've created. We're done." The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Amanda had kept her word. She hadn't asked for anything, hadn't tried to claim any assets. She'd simply vanished from his life as completely as if she'd never been there at all. Marcus had told himself he was better off without her, that her moral objections were naive, that she couldn't understand the complexity of the business world he operated in. He'd thrown himself deeper into his work, expanded his client base, perfected his systems. But now, staring down at Sophia sleeping peacefully in her hospital crib, Marcus realized that Amanda had been right about one thing. Money did leave traces. And sometimes those traces led to places you never expected, like a hospital room where your ex-wife had just died, giving birth to your daughter. The question was, what other traces had he left, and who else knew about them? The text message about knowing about the baby had come from a blocked number, but Marcus's digital forensics were more sophisticated than most people realized. By the time he reached his penthouse, he'd traced the message through 3 proxy servers and 2 VPN endpoints. The trail ended at a corporate account registered to Blackwater Financial Services, a company that didn't exist in any legitimate business database. Marcus poured himself 3 fingers of Macallan 25 and stared out at the Vegas Strip while his computers worked. Somewhere in this neon-drenched city, someone was playing games with information they shouldn't have. In Marcus's world, information was more valuable than money and far more dangerous. His encrypted phone rang at 11:47 p.m. The caller ID showed only a number, but Marcus recognized the international prefix, Eastern Europe, specifically Ukraine. "Mr. Kane," the voice was heavily accented, careful. "I believe we have something to discuss." "I don't discuss business with people who threaten my family," Marcus said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "No threats, Mr. Kane, simply information. My name is Dmitry Volkov. Perhaps Mr. Chen has mentioned me?" Vincent Chen. Marcus felt pieces clicking into place in his mind. Vincent had introduced him to several international clients over the past year, but he'd been deliberately vague about their backgrounds. Marcus had assumed they were oligarchs or tech entrepreneurs who needed privacy for political reasons. He was beginning to suspect he'd been naive. "What do you want, Dmitry?" "I want to meet. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the Aria Poker Room. Come alone and bring your laptop. We have business to discuss. And if I don't? Then your beautiful daughter becomes an orphan much sooner than necessary." The line went dead. Marcus set down his phone and walked to his wall safe. Behind the stacks of currency and hard drives was something he'd hoped never to need, a Heckler & Koch P30L in a custom holster. Marcus had purchased it legally 2 years ago, along with extensive training at a private facility outside Reno. In his business, paranoia wasn't a character flaw, it was a survival strategy. But first he needed to see Amanda. The funeral home was closed, but Marcus had learned long ago that money could open doors that weren't supposed to open. The night manager, a man named Thompson, who asked no questions and accepted payment in Bitcoin, led Marcus through corridors that smelled of flowers and formaldehyde. "She looks peaceful," Thompson said softly, opening the door to the viewing room. Marcus stepped inside and felt his breath catch. Amanda looked exactly as he remembered, except for the pallor that death brings. She was wearing the blue dress she'd worn to their wedding rehearsal dinner, the one that made her eyes look like sapphires. "Could you give us a moment?" Marcus asked. Thompson nodded and closed the door, leaving Marcus alone with the woman who'd been the center of his world for 2 years and the source of his deepest regret for 6 months. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, pulling a chair next to the casket. "I'm sorry I chose money over you. I'm sorry I was too stubborn to see what I was losing until it was gone." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small jewelry box. Inside was Amanda's wedding ring, the one she'd thrown at his feet the night she filed for divorce. Marcus had kept it, telling himself it was just expensive jewelry that shouldn't be wasted. The truth was more complicated. "I know you probably can't hear me," Marcus continued, "but I need you to know that I'll take care of her. Sophia, I'll keep her safe, and I'll try to be the kind of father you wanted me to be, the kind of man you wanted me to be." He slipped the ring onto Amanda's finger where it belonged, where it had always belonged. "And I'll find out who killed you." The words surprised him as he spoke them. Until that moment, Marcus had accepted the doctor's explanation about complications from childbirth. But now, with mysterious text messages and threatening phone calls, he was beginning to wonder if Amanda's death had been as random as it appeared. Marcus kissed Amanda's forehead and walked out of the funeral home with a clarity he hadn't felt since the day she'd left him. He had 24 hours to prepare for a meeting that would probably determine whether he and Sophia lived to see the weekend. Time to remind everyone why Marcus Kane had become one of the most successful money launderers on the West Coast. It wasn't just because he was good with computers. The next afternoon, Marcus arrived at the Aria Poker Room, carrying a laptop bag and wearing a tailored suit that concealed his weapon better than most people concealed their insecurities. The poker room was busy, filled with tourists trying to look professional and professionals trying to look casual. Dmitry Volkov was easy to spot. 6'4", grey hair, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. He was playing Texas Hold'em at a high-stakes table, winning just enough to look competent but not enough to draw attention. "Mr. Kane," Dmitry said without looking up from his cards, "join us, the game is about to get interesting." Marcus bought in for 50,000 and took the seat to Dimitri's left. For 30 minutes they played poker and made small talk about the weather, the odds, the quality of the Aria's cocktail service. To anyone watching, they were just two businessmen enjoying an afternoon of gambling. Finally, during a hand where Marcus was dealing, Dimitri leaned close and spoke quietly. "Your ex-wife was asking questions about your business associates." Marcus kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that prosecutors ask when they're building federal cases. She'd been in contact with the FBI for 6 weeks before her death." "You're lying." "Am I?" Dimitri slid a photograph across the table, hidden beneath his cards. It showed Amanda entering a federal building in downtown Las Vegas. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago. She was providing them with documentation about your money laundering operation. Marcus studied the photograph, his poker face hiding the chaos in his mind. Amanda had hated his business, but she'd also been a criminal defense attorney. She understood the concept of attorney-client privilege, the importance of confidentiality. She would never have voluntarily cooperated with federal investigators unless she'd been given no choice. "What did you do to her?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing that wasn't necessary," Dimitri replied, calling Marcus's bluff with a pair of kings. "She was going to destroy a very profitable arrangement. We simply incentivized her to be more cooperative." "Incentivized how?" Dimitri smiled, and Marcus saw the kind of coldness that came from decades of dealing with problems through violence. "We told her that if she didn't help the FBI build a case against you, we would kill her baby." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Amanda hadn't been cooperating with the FBI to destroy him. She'd been trying to protect their daughter. "But here's the interesting part," Dimitri continued, organizing his chips with the methodical precision of a man who enjoyed causing pain. "She was also feeding the FBI false information. Clever woman, your ex-wife. She gave them just enough truth to keep them interested, but not enough to actually build a prosecutable case." Marcus felt something dangerous building in his chest, a combination of rage and protective instinct that he'd never experienced before. "So you killed her. Complications during childbirth, these things happen." Dimitri shrugged. "Dr. Martinez was very helpful in ensuring that Mrs. Kane's labor was challenging." "Dr. Martinez works for you." "Dr. Martinez has gambling debts that make her very cooperative, as do several other staff members at Mountain View Medical Center." Marcus realized with crystal clarity that he was sitting across from a man who had murdered his ex-wife and was now threatening his newborn daughter. A man who saw human life as nothing more than a business expense, a problem to be solved with money or violence. "What do you want?" Marcus asked. "I want you to continue doing exactly what you've been doing. Moving our money, keeping our secrets, asking no questions. But now you have additional motivation to be reliable." Dimitri leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with the confidence of a man who held all the cards. "Your daughter is safe as long as you're useful. The moment you become a liability, the moment you try to disappear or cooperate with authorities or do anything except what we tell you to do, Sophia Kane will have a very short life. And if I refuse, then you'll both be dead before the weekend." Dimitri stood up, gathering his chips. "I trust we understand each other, Mr. Kane." Marcus watched Dimitri walk away, disappearing into the casino crowd like a shark returning to deep water. For several minutes, he sat alone at the poker table, processing what he'd learned. Amanda hadn't betrayed him. She'd died trying to protect their daughter from monsters that Marcus had invited into their lives. He pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first was to a private security company that specialized in protection for high-net-worth individuals. The second was to a lawyer who handled custody cases involving complicated circumstances. The third was to Vincent Chen. "Vincent, we need to talk. Tonight, and bring everything you know about Dmitry Volkov." Marcus Kane had spent 2 years building a criminal empire. Now he was going to use everything he'd learned to destroy the people who'd murdered his wife and threatened his daughter. The game was about to change, and Marcus intended to win. Vincent Chen's Beverly Hills mansion sat behind gates that cost more than most people's houses, but as Marcus drove through them at midnight, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was entering a trap. The circular driveway was lit by soft landscape lighting, giving the entire property an ethereal quality that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Vincent was waiting on his front steps, smoking a cigarette with the nervous energy of a man who knew his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. He'd traded his usual designer suits for jeans and a UCLA hoodie, which somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. "You brought company," Vincent observed, nodding toward the black Suburban that had followed Marcus through the gates. "Security," Marcus replied, climbing out of his McLaren. "Given that people keep trying to kill my family, paranoia seems like a reasonable response." They walked into Vincent's study, a room that looked like it had been transported directly from an English manor house. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, and a bar that probably contained more alcohol than most restaurants. Vincent poured himself vodka. Marcus declined. "So," Vincent said, settling into a chair that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, "Dmitri found you. You could have warned me that your overseas investors were basically the Russian mob. Ukrainian. Actually, and you never asked for details about our clients' backgrounds." Vincent took a long drink. In this business, curiosity is often fatal. Marcus studied his business partner's face, looking for tells. Vincent had been the one who'd introduced him to this world, who'd convinced him that moving money for international clients was just sophisticated financial consulting. Now Marcus was beginning to wonder how much Vincent had known from the beginning. "Tell me about Dmitri Volkov," Marcus said. "Dmitri is what you might call a facilitator. He moves money for people who can't use traditional banking systems. Arms dealers, human traffickers, drug cartels, anyone with large amounts of cash and a need for discretion." "And you've been working with him for how long?" Vincent hesitated, which was answer enough. "About 5 years." 5 years. "So when you approached me 18 months ago, this wasn't a new business opportunity. You were recruiting me to replace someone. My previous technology partner had become unreliable." "What happened to him?" "Car accident. Very tragic." Marcus felt pieces clicking into place in his mind. Vincent hadn't approached him randomly. He'd been specifically recruited because Vincent needed someone with his particular combination of technical skills and moral flexibility, someone who could build sophisticated money laundering systems without asking too many questions about where the money came from. "How much does Dmitri know about my operation?" Marcus asked. "Everything, account numbers, transaction volumes, client lists. He's been monitoring your systems since the beginning." "Monitoring how?" Vincent walked to his bar and poured another drink, this one larger than the first. "The software you use for transaction processing? I provided it, remember? What you don't know is that it includes monitoring modules that send copies of all data to offshore servers. The monitoring was dormant for the first year. We wanted you to feel secure, establish your operations. It was only activated recently when your transaction volumes reached our threshold levels." Marcus felt a cold fury building in his chest. For 18 months he'd believed he was running an independent operation, building his own criminal empire. Instead, he'd been nothing more than an employee, a technical contractor working for people who could eliminate him whenever he became inconvenient. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have said no. And Dmitri needed someone exactly like you, intelligent, ambitious, but naive enough to believe this was just about money." "It's not about money." Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Marcus, Dmitri's organization moves $2 billion a year through systems like yours. The money is just a tool. What they're really trafficking is power. The power to corrupt officials, eliminate enemies, control governments. And you're okay with that?" "I'm alive. In this business, that's the only measure of success that matters." Marcus stood up and walked to the window overlooking Vincent's perfectly manicured backyard. In the distance, he could see the lights of Los Angeles spreading out like a circuit board. Millions of people living their lives completely unaware that men like Dmitri Volkov existed. "I need to get out," Marcus said quietly. "Take Sophia and disappear." "You can't run from these people, Marcus. They have resources you can't imagine. Contacts in every major government, operatives in every major city. The only reason you're still alive is because you're useful to them. Then I'll make myself useless." "How?" Marcus turned back to Vincent, his mind already working through possibilities. "By destroying the evidence. All of it. Transaction records, account numbers, server logs. I'll crash the entire system and make it look like a cyber attack. And then what? You think Dmitri will just shrug and move on? These people killed your wife, Marcus. They'll kill you and your daughter just to make a point. Maybe, but if I can destroy enough of their financial infrastructure, they'll have bigger problems to worry about than revenge." Vincent set down his drink and studied Marcus's face. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious." Then you'll need help. More help than your security team can provide. What kind of help? Vincent pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts. There's someone you should meet. Someone who has as much reason to hate Dmitry Volkov as you do. Who? The woman whose husband Dmitry murdered 3 years ago. The previous technology partner I mentioned. He wasn't killed because he was unreliable. He was killed because he tried to expose Dmitry's operation to the FBI. Vincent showed Marcus a photograph on his phone. A woman in her early 30s, blonde hair, green eyes, professional clothing. She looked like she could have been a corporate lawyer or a tech executive. She definitely didn't look like someone who'd be interested in bringing down international criminal organizations. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. She's been hunting Dmitry for 3 years, building evidence, tracking his operations. She has resources you don't, connections you'll need. And she'll help me. Why? Because you have something she needs. Access to Dmitry's current financial systems. And because she understands what it's like to lose someone you love to these monsters. Marcus studied the photograph. Sarah Mitchell had the kind of focused intensity he recognized in people who'd turned their grief into a weapon, the kind of person who would burn down the world to get justice. Set up a meeting, Marcus said. Already done. She's flying in from DC tomorrow morning. But Marcus, Vincent's voice carried a warning. Once you start down this path, there's no going back. Dmitry will come for you with everything he has. Are you prepared for that? Marcus thought about Amanda lying in that funeral home, about Sophia sleeping peacefully in her hospital crib, about the choice between safety and justice. Amanda had tried to choose safety and died anyway. Maybe it was time to choose justice and see what happened. I'm prepared, Marcus said, but as he drove back to Las Vegas through the empty desert, Marcus wondered if anyone could really be prepared for a war against people who treated murder as a business expense. The only thing he knew for certain was that he was about to find out. His phone buzzed with a text message from the same block number as before. Enjoyed your meeting with Mr. Chen. Give our regards to Ms. Mitchell when you see her tomorrow. Marcus smiled grimly and typed back, looking forward to it. The game was about to begin in earnest. Sarah Mitchell arrived at McCarran International Airport wearing a Navy business suit and carrying a briefcase that probably contained enough evidence to topple governments. Marcus spotted her immediately. She had the focused intensity of someone who'd spent 3 years preparing for war and the careful wariness of someone who understood that her enemies had unlimited resources. They met at a coffee shop in Terminal 1, surrounded by the white noise of travelers and slot machines. Sarah ordered black coffee. Marcus ordered the same. Neither of them was interested in small talk. Vincent tells me you want to destroy Dmitry Volkov, Sarah said without preamble. I want to protect my daughter. If destroying Dmitry accomplishes that, then yes. Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet, showing Marcus a complex organizational chart that looked like something from a corporate consulting presentation. Names, photographs, connecting lines that showed relationships and hierarchies. Dmitry isn't just a money launderer, Sarah explained. He's a facilitator for what intelligence agencies call a dark network, a collection of criminal organizations that share resources and information. Arms dealers, human traffickers, drug cartels, corrupt officials. Your money laundering operation isn't just cleaning cash, it's funding the infrastructure that keeps these networks operational. Marcus studied the chart, recognizing some of the names from Vincent's client list. How much money are we talking about? $2 billion annually. Flowing through systems like yours in 12 countries. The operation you've been running is just one node in a much larger network. And my role? You process about 30% of their North American transactions, which means your systems contain financial records that could link Dmitry to criminal organizations across 3 continents. Sarah swiped to a new screen showing bank account numbers, transaction logs, and what looked like surveillance photographs. My husband discovered this 3 years ago. He tried to gather enough evidence to interest federal prosecutors, but Dmitry found out before he could make his approach. What happened? Car accident. Brake failure on a mountain road in Colorado. Sarah's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the controlled fury in her eyes. Very thorough, very professional. The kind of accident that insurance companies pay out on without asking questions. But you kept investigating. I'm a former CIA financial analyst. I know how to follow money trails and I know how to stay invisible while doing it. Sarah closed the tablet and leaned forward. What I don't have is real-time access to active money laundering systems. That's what I need from you. In exchange for what? Protection for your daughter and a chance to destroy Dimitri's operation permanently. Marcus considered the offer. Sarah Mitchell had resources he didn't: federal contacts, intelligence training, 3 years of research into Dimitri's organization. But she also had the focused intensity of someone whose entire life revolved around revenge, which could make her either very helpful or very dangerous. "What's your plan?" Marcus asked. "We use your access to Dimitri's financial systems to plant evidence that makes it look like he's skimming money from his own clients. Drug cartels, arms dealers, human traffickers, these aren't the kind of people who forgive financial betrayal. And then we sit back and watch them tear each other apart." It was elegant, Marcus had to admit. Rather than trying to expose Dimitri to law enforcement, which could take years and might fail anyway, Sarah was proposing to turn his criminal associates against him. Let them handle the justice that courts might not deliver. "There's one problem," Marcus said. "Dimitri has been monitoring my systems since the beginning. If I start manipulating financial records, he'll know immediately. Not if we do it right." Sarah pulled out a USB drive. "This contains malware specifically designed to infiltrate the monitoring software Vincent installed. It'll give us a 6-hour window where we can modify records without detection. 6 hours to plant evidence across multiple criminal organizations. 6 hours to start a war that will destroy Dmitry Volkov and everyone connected to him." Marcus thought about Sophia sleeping peacefully in her hospital crib, about Amanda dying because she'd tried to protect their daughter, about the choice between playing it safe and taking control of the situation. "There's something else you should know," Marcus said. "Dimitri has people inside the hospital where Sophia is staying. Dr. Martinez and several staff members are on his payroll." Sarah's expression hardened. "Then we need to move her." "Where?" "Dimitri's organization has resources in every major city. Even if I could get her out of the hospital safely, where could we take her that would be secure? I have a safe house in Montana. Off-grid, fully stocked, defensible terrain. We could move her there tonight. And then what? Live in hiding for the rest of our lives? Or we could end this now, permanently." Marcus stared at the USB drive Sarah had placed on the table between them. Such a small thing to contain such destructive potential. The smart play would be to take Sophia and run. Disappear into whatever witness protection program Sarah could arrange. Hope that Dimitri eventually forgot about them. But Marcus Kane hadn't become successful by playing it safe. He'd built his empire by taking calculated risks, by moving faster and thinking more creatively than his competition. And right now, his competition was a Ukrainian sociopath who thought he could threaten Marcus's daughter without consequences. "How do we start?" Marcus asked, picking up the USB drive. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since they'd met, Marcus saw something other than controlled fury in her expression. "First, we get your daughter to safety. Then we burn Dimitri's world to the ground." 3 hours later, Marcus was signing discharge papers for Sophia Kane, while Sarah coordinated with a private medical transport service that specialized in discretion. Dr. Martinez had asked several pointed questions about the early discharge, but a cash payment of $50,000 had resolved her concerns. As Marcus carried his daughter out of Mountain View Medical Center, he felt the weight of protective responsibility settling on his shoulders like armor. Sophia was so small, so fragile, completely dependent on his ability to keep her safe in a world that had already proven itself hostile to their family. "She's beautiful," Sarah said softly as they loaded Sophia into the medical transport vehicle. "She has your eyes. Amanda's chin, though. Stubborn as hell, probably." They drove through the Nevada desert in a convoy of 3 vehicles: the medical transport, Sarah's rental car, and Marcus's McLaren. As Las Vegas disappeared in the rearview mirror, Marcus felt like he was leaving behind the last traces of his old life. When this was over, assuming they survived, nothing would be the same. His phone rang as they crossed into Utah. The caller ID showed Vincent's number. "Dimitri knows you took the baby," Vincent said without preamble. "He's mobilizing resources. Professional killers, probably military trained. They'll be tracking you within hours." "How many?" "6 that I know of. Maybe more." Marcus looked ahead at the medical transport carrying his daughter, then back at the empty road behind them. No signs of pursuit yet, but that would change soon. "Vincent, I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "Transfer control of all my cryptocurrency wallets to a company called Mitchell Securities. Sarah will give you the account numbers." "Marcus, that's $30 million. You're giving her everything?" "Insurance policy. If Dmitry kills me, I want him to know that every transaction he's ever made through my systems will be handed over to federal prosecutors. And if you survive, then I'll have enough clean money to disappear properly." Marcus ended the call and pressed harder on the accelerator. Behind him, Sarah was talking on an encrypted phone, coordinating with contacts who could provide weapons, ammunition, and tactical support at their destination. Ahead of them, the Montana safe house waited. But Marcus was beginning to suspect that Dmitry wouldn't let them reach it unopposed. Some battles couldn't be avoided, only prepared for. The war was about to begin, and Marcus intended to end it decisively. The Montana safe house sat on 300 acres of wilderness, accessible only by a single dirt road that wound through pine forests and across streams that could stop vehicles if you didn't know the crossing points. Sarah had chosen well. The location was defensible, isolated, and stocked with enough supplies to survive a siege. Marcus stood on the cabin's front porch at dawn, watching his daughter sleep in a portable crib they'd set up near the window. Sophia was completely unaware that her short life had already become the center of an international criminal conspiracy. That powerful men were making life-and-death decisions based on her existence. "Movement on the southern approach," Sarah called from the cabin's communications center, where multiple monitors showed feeds from security cameras positioned along the access road. 3 vehicles moving fast. Marcus picked up the rifle Sarah had provided, a military-grade weapon that felt strange in his hands, despite the training he'd received. For 2 years, his wars had been fought with keyboards and cryptocurrency. Now he was preparing for something much more primitive. "How long until they reach us?" Marcus asked. 10 minutes, maybe less." Sarah was checking weapons and ammunition with the efficient movements of someone who'd done this before. She'd changed from her business suit into tactical gear that made her look like she belonged in a military operation rather than a boardroom. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked. "We could still run." "Run where?" "Dmitry has resources on every continent. He'll never stop hunting you, and he'll never stop threatening your daughter." Sarah slammed a magazine into her rifle. "This ends today." Marcus's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID showed Dmitry's number. "Mr. Kane," Dmitry's voice was calm, conversational. "I believe you have something that belongs in a hospital. Sophia belongs with her father. Sophia belongs wherever I say she belongs. You've caused considerable inconvenience, Mr. Kane, moving the child, involving Ms. Mitchell, attempting to interfere with business operations. These actions require correction. What do you want?" "I want you to walk out of that cabin with your hands visible and your daughter in your arms. Ms. Mitchell can remain inside. This matter doesn't concern her." "And then what?" "Then we resolve our business relationship in a manner that ensures future compliance." Marcus understood the euphemism. Dmitry intended to kill him and take Sophia as leverage to control whatever poor contractor replaced him. Sarah would be left alive only long enough to watch, a lesson about the consequences of interfering with Dmitry's operations. "Counteroffer," Marcus said. "You and your people turn around and drive back to Las Vegas. In exchange, I don't upload every financial record from your operation to WikiLeaks." Dmitry laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Mr. Kane." "Actually, I am." Marcus pulled out his laptop and connected it to the cabin's satellite internet. On the screen, he displayed a web page that showed real-time cryptocurrency transactions, bank account numbers, and what looked like surveillance photographs of Dmitry meeting with known criminals. "Everything you've ever done through my systems is documented here," Marcus continued. "Transaction logs, account numbers, client identities, 3 years of evidence that links you to drug cartels, arms dealers, human traffickers, and corrupt officials across 3 continents. You wouldn't dare. Exposing that information would implicate you as well. I'm already implicated. The difference is that I have federal immunity in exchange for my cooperation." Marcus glanced at Sarah, who nodded confirmation. "Ms. Mitchell has been working with FBI financial crimes investigators for 3 years. My testimony, combined with this evidence, will be enough to dismantle your entire organization." The silence that followed was long enough for Marcus to wonder if Dmitry had ended the call. Finally, the Ukrainian spoke again, his voice carrying a different quality now, less confident, more calculating. "What do you propose?" "You disappear. Permanently. Close your operations, liquidate your assets, and find a new line of work. In exchange, this evidence remains sealed in federal files rather than being released publicly. And Ms. Mitchell agrees to this arrangement." Sarah took the phone from Marcus. "Mr. Volkov, my husband tried to expose your operation through legal channels. You killed him for it. Now I'm offering you something he never got, a chance to walk away alive. And if I refuse, then you die badly and slowly and very publicly. Your choice." Another long silence. When Dmitri spoke again, his voice carried the weary resignation of a man who understood that his war was lost. "I require 48 hours to arrange transitions." "You have 24 hours, Sarah replied. "After that, everything goes public." The call ended. Marcus and Sarah looked at each other, both understanding that Dmitri's agreement was probably a tactical maneuver rather than genuine surrender. Men like Dmitri Volkov didn't retreat. They regrouped and attacked from different angles. "Think he'll honor the deal?" Marcus asked. "No chance, but we've bought time to prepare for whatever he's planning next." Sarah was right. 6 hours later, her security cameras detected movement in the tree line surrounding the cabin. Not the direct assault Dmitri had threatened, but something more subtle. Reconnaissance, positioning, the careful preparation that preceded a siege. "Professional military," Sarah observed, studying the camera feeds. "They're setting up overlapping fields of fire, blocking escape routes. This isn't going to be a quick strike. They're planning to wait us out." Marcus stood next to Sophia's crib, watching his daughter sleep peacefully despite the chaos surrounding her life. She was so small, so innocent, completely unaware that her father had built his fortune by facilitating crimes that destroyed families like theirs. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quietly, though he wasn't sure if he was apologizing to Sophia or Amanda or himself. "I'm sorry I made choices that brought this into our lives." "Self-pity isn't going to keep her safe," Sarah said, not unkindly. "What's going to keep her safe is making sure Dmitri never walks away from this mountain." Marcus looked up from his daughter to find Sarah watching him with the focused intensity he'd seen in soldiers and surgeons, people who understood that some situations required absolute commitment regardless of personal cost. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop playing defense and start playing offense." Sarah walked to a wall safe and removed something Marcus hadn't expected to see, a block of what looked like military-grade explosives with a digital timer attached. "C4, Sarah explained, "enough to bring down the entire northern slope. If we can channel Dmitri's people into the right position." "You want to start an avalanche?" "I want to end this war definitively. No survivors, no witnesses, no loose ends that could threaten your daughter later." Marcus stared at the explosives, understanding that Sarah was offering him something more valuable than money or protection. She was offering him certainty. The knowledge that Dmitri Volkov would never threaten his family again, no matter what it cost to achieve that certainty. "How do we do it?" Marcus asked. The plan Sarah outlined was complex, dangerous, and completely insane. It involved using Marcus as bait to draw Dmitri's people into position, while Sarah rigged the explosives at carefully calculated points along the mountain slope. The timing would have to be perfect. Too early, and they'd miss their targets. Too late, and Marcus would be caught in the blast zone himself. "One problem," Marcus said when Sarah finished explaining. "Who takes care of Sophia if this goes wrong?" "It won't go wrong." "But if it does?" Sarah pulled out a satellite phone and showed Marcus a contact number. "My sister in Portland. She's been briefed on the situation, has legal documents that would give her temporary custody. If neither of us walks away from this, Sophia will be safe." Marcus felt something settle in his chest, a combination of relief and resolution that he'd been seeking since Amanda's death. For the first time in months, he had a plan that didn't involve running or hiding, or hoping that powerful enemies would simply forget about him. "When do we start?" Marcus asked. "Now." 3 hours later, Marcus walked out of the cabin carrying a white flag and his daughter, his steps carefully calculated to draw Dmitri's people into the kill zone Sarah had prepared. Behind him, charges were set at 6 different points along the mountain slope, each one timed to create a cascade effect that would bury everything below. "That's far enough," a voice called from the tree line. Marcus recognized Dmitri's accent, though he couldn't see the man himself. "Place the child on the ground and step back." "I want to see you first," Marcus replied. "Face to face, like professionals. You're hardly in a position to make demands, Mr. Kane. I'm in a position to ensure that your operation is exposed to every law enforcement agency in 3 countries if anything happens to me. My death triggers an automatic upload of evidence to federal databases. news organizations and several criminal organizations that would be very interested to learn how much money you've been skimming from their accounts. It was a bluff, but a good one. Marcus had learned from his mistakes with Amanda. He'd prepared dead man's switches, automated systems that would activate if he failed to check in regularly. Even if Dimitri killed him, the consequences would follow. You've become quite paranoid, Mr. Kane. I've become quite motivated. Dimitri emerged from the tree line, flanked by two men who moved with the controlled precision of military contractors. He was smiling, which somehow made him more threatening rather than less. Your daughter is beautiful, Dimitri said, stopping 20 feet away. It would be tragic if she grew up an orphan. It would be tragic if she grew up in a world where men like you exist. Men like me built the world your daughter will inherit, Mr. Kane. We provide services that governments cannot acknowledge but desperately need. We solve problems that legal systems are too slow and too scrupulous to address. You're criminals. We're realists. Dimitri gestured to his companions, who began moving to flank Marcus's position. But this philosophical discussion is pointless. You've interfered with business operations, cost us considerable money, and threatened the security of our clients. These actions require correction. Marcus shifted his weight, moving slightly to his left. The movement looked like nervous fidgeting, but it actually positioned him closer to the rocky outcropping Sarah had designated as his cover point. Before you correct anything, Marcus said, you should know that Ms. Mitchell isn't in the cabin. Where is she? Right behind you. The explosion came from the mountain slope above Dimitri's position, a thunderous crack that sent a shower of rocks and snow cascading down the mountainside. Marcus threw himself behind the rocky outcropping, clutching Sophia against his chest, as the avalanche Sarah had triggered buried everything in its path. When the rumbling stopped and the dust settled, Marcus emerged to find a transformed landscape. Where Dimitri and his men had been standing, there was now nothing but rock and snow. The threat that had dominated his life for months had been eliminated in less than 30 seconds. Sarah appeared from the tree line, moving carefully across the debris field. Is she okay? She asked, reaching for Sophia. Marcus looked down at his daughter, who had slept through the entire battle. She was completely unharmed, completely unaware that her future had just been secured through methods that would never appear in any legal textbook. She's perfect, Marcus said. 1 year later, Marcus Kane was living in Portland under a different name, running a legitimate tech consulting business that helped small companies optimize their digital infrastructure. Sophia was walking now, tottering around their suburban house with the fearless confidence of a child who'd never known danger. Sarah Mitchell had returned to Washington, D.C., where she worked for a federal task force that investigated international financial crimes. They talked occasionally, updating each other on their new lives, but both understood that their partnership had been forged in circumstances too extreme to sustain in peacetime. Marcus never knew if Dmitri Volkov's body was ever found. The avalanche had been classified as a natural disaster, investigated by park rangers rather than law enforcement. Vincent Chen had disappeared shortly after Dimitri's death, liquidating his assets and vanishing into whatever witness protection program the federal government provided for cooperative criminal associates. The money Marcus had earned during his 2 years as a money launderer was gone, donated anonymously to organizations that helped victims of human trafficking and drug violence. It seemed like appropriate penance for the crimes he'd facilitated, even if those donations couldn't undo the damage his work had enabled. But as Marcus watched Sophia taking her first steps in their backyard, chasing butterflies, with the single-minded determination that reminded him so much of Amanda, he realized that some forms of wealth couldn't be measured in cryptocurrency or offshore accounts. He'd lost everything he thought mattered and found everything that actually did. And for the first time since Amanda's death, Marcus Kane was genuinely happy. "Dada," Sophia said, grabbing onto his leg for balance as she navigated the uneven grass. "I'm here, baby girl," Marcus replied, lifting her into his arms. "I'm always going to be here." It was a promise he intended to keep, no matter what it cost. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. More stories of redemption, family, and the prices we pay for our choices are coming soon.